The night before my wedding, in his suitcase, I discovered a marriage certificate with another woman, photos from their wedding, an itinerary for a honeymoon in Japan, and an ultrasound report confirming a twin pregnancy. I immediately called my wedding planner, and on the wedding day, when the bride made her entrance, the groom instantly went insane. In 12 hours, I am set to officially become Mrs. Jackson Vanderbilt III. In 12 hours, our decade-long love story, a love born in childhood, will finally come to fruition. This penthouse in the heart of the Upper East Side, where we plan to build our home. Tonight, the silence is particularly deep. Outside, the New York City lights glitter like an artificial Milky Way. But an indescribable restlessness churns in my heart. I told myself it was just the typical pre-wedding anxiety every bride feels. From the bathroom came the rhythmic sound of running water. Jack was inside. With a smile, I decided to do one last check of the travel suitcase, the one he said he had packed for our honeymoon in Hawaii. I just wanted to make sure our passports and IDs were in order. I've always been this meticulous, and Jack always said he loved that detail-oriented side of my personality. The expensive designer suitcase was placed neatly beside the closet. I unzipped it and checked the outer mesh pocket. Everything seemed fine, but just as I was about to lift the main compartment divider to check the secret pocket underneath, my hand paused. It was strangely bulky. My hands trembled, but I felt a hard plastic file folder hidden beneath the fabric. My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't my suitcase. I had no right to go through it, but a dreadful premonition kept me from stopping. As I pulled out the folder, my breath caught in my throat. The first document was a copy of a marriage certificate. Groom, Jackson Vanderbilt III. I held my breath. Bride, Isabel Thorne. Isabel Thorne. That name was all too familiar. I tried to search my memories, but my mind went blank. The registration date was March 15th, just 3 months ago. 3 months ago, I was with him trying on wedding gowns. My throat went dry. Beneath the certificate was a black USB flash drive. I plugged it into the laptop that was open on the vanity. Hundreds of photos appeared. No, these weren't memories. It was a full, professionally shot wedding album from Napa Valley. Jack still wore that radiant smile, that tender gaze, but his arms were wrapped around another woman. And Isabel, dressed in an immaculate wedding gown, leaned against his shoulder with a dazzling smile of pure happiness. They looked truly good together. They looked at each other with the same devotion I believed he reserved only for me. I felt a tightness in my chest. I scrolled through the photos hastily, wishing it was all a nightmare, a cruel joke, or a misunderstanding, but it wasn't. The third document was a booked honeymoon itinerary. It wasn't Hawaii. The destination was Kyoto, Japan. Airline tickets, Shinkansen bullet train passes, reservation receipts for a luxury ryokan hotel. Everything was in his name and hers, and then the last document slid out. It was like a blade that severed the last thread of my sanity. An OB/GYN report from a prestigious Fifth Avenue clinic. Patient's name, Isabel Thorne. The date of the last checkup was 2 days ago. The result? A 12-week twin pregnancy. Development completely normal. 12 weeks. That meant the babies were conceived at the exact same time he married her. I collapsed onto the cold hardwood floor, and the folder scattered at my feet. My ears were ringing. I no longer saw the city lights or heard its sounds. I only saw the happy smiles of Jack and Isabel, and the 2 small lives growing in her womb. 10 years. My 10-year love was nothing but a grand play in which I was the only actor who didn't know the script. The sound of water in the bathroom suddenly stopped, followed by the click of the lock. He was coming out. I hurriedly gathered the documents, stuffed them back into the suitcase's secret compartment, and zipped it up. Just as the bathroom door opened, Jack walked out with wet hair, wearing only a towel around his waist. He looked so relaxed and happy. He laughed when he saw me sitting on the floor next to the suitcase. "What's wrong, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost. Are you nervous about tomorrow?" He came over and bent down to hug me. I pulled away and forced a smile. "No, my love, I was just checking the passports in case we forgot something." "Don't worry about that. I've prepared everything." Jack stroked my hair, his smile still radiant. "Come on, let's get to sleep early. Tomorrow, You have to be the most beautiful bride in the world. The most beautiful bride in the world. Those words now sounded like an insult. I nodded, feigning exhaustion. I got into bed and pulled the comforter over me. Jack didn't notice anything strange, or perhaps he just didn't care. He turned off the light, and soon his rhythmic breathing filled the silence beside me, but I couldn't sleep. In the darkness, tears streamed endlessly down my face. Isabel Thorne, that name, kept swirling in my head. And then the memory hit me. I remembered. Isabel, the Vanderbilt family's protégée, a sort of adopted sister they had looked after for years. I remembered that Isabel was the daughter of a business partner of Jack's father who had gone bankrupt. Her father, in despair, took a drastic step, leaving behind his wife and young daughter. Jack's mother, Mrs. Vanderbilt, took pity on her and brought her into their home, raising her like a member of the family. At the time, I thought Mrs. Vanderbilt was a kind and generous woman. Isabel was a few years younger than us, always appearing fragile and delicate, calling Jack by his name and me, Olivia, rarely meeting my gaze and always speaking in a soft, hesitant voice. I felt sorry for her situation. I even scolded Jack when he was cold and distant with her. "Jack, don't be so hard on Isabel. She's been through a lot." At that moment, Jack looked at me with a strange expression. "Olivia, you have no idea. She's not as simple as you think. It's better if you keep your distance." I thought he was being overly suspicious. I believed he was a good man who knew how to maintain boundaries. I trusted him blindly. But that coldness wasn't rejection. It was an elaborate facade to deceive me. He wasn't protecting me from Isabel. He was protecting her from my suspicion. All the details began to fall into place with terrifying clarity. 3 months ago, Jack said he had to fly to Dubai urgently to close a crucial deal. A deal, he claimed, that could decide the future of the entire company. He was gone for almost a week. It turns out that's when he took Isabel by the hand to register their marriage. A month ago, he said he had to inspect a new hotel project in Napa Valley. He complained about how exhausting the work was and even sent me photos of boring design blueprints. It turns out he was busy taking romantic wedding photos with his legal wife. For our honeymoon, he told me about the blue sea and white sands of Hawaii. But behind my back, he was secretly booking tickets to Kyoto with Isabel. A perfect plan, a deception calculated down to the last detail. The man I had loved for 10 years, whom I trusted more than myself, was a masterfully cunning stage director. While planning the wedding of the century with me, he was building a small family with another woman. The initial pain gradually transformed into a chill that ran down my spine. I realized I had not only been betrayed, but had been played for a fool, treated like a mere pawn in his game. But why? If he already had Isabel, and was even expecting children with her, why insist on marrying me? Jack's steady breathing beside me now felt disgusting. That sound, which for 10 years had brought me peace, was now like the ticking of a gear crushing my heart. I lay awake all night, staring at the ceiling, trying to find the answer to a single question. Why? If he already loved Isabel, was expecting children with her, and had even married her in secret, why keep me around? Why hold such a lavish and public wedding? How did he plan to manage both Isabel and me, one in the light and one in the shadows? Or did he think I was so stupid that I would never find out? When all hypotheses seemed absurd, an old memory surfaced. Before he passed away, my father was the most trusted lawyer for Jack's grandfather. Jack's grandfather was an old-school capitalist, a shrewd titan of the business world who had built an empire from scratch. My father and the old man were more than employer and employee. They were close friends. I remember once, after a drink, my father took my hand and warned me, "Olivia, I know you love Jack, but remember, his family is complicated, especially his grandfather's will. He only trusted you." At the time, I laughed, thinking my father was worrying too much. But now, every one of his words came back to me with vivid clarity. My father told me that Jack's grandfather trusted no one, not even his own grandchildren. He feared his life's work would be ruined by incompetent descendants or wrong marriages. That's why he included a special clause in his will. Jack, as the primary heir, would only inherit 100% of the Vanderbilt Group's shares if he legally married me, Olivia, before his 30th birthday. And tomorrow, our wedding day, was precisely Jack's 30th birthday. Now I understood everything. It wasn't about love, it was about billions of dollars. My 10-year love with my childhood friend was simply a necessary condition stipulated in his inheritance contract. If he didn't marry me, he would lose everything. And what was worse, the will also specified that if it was discovered he had committed bigamy or had children out of wedlock before marrying me, the inheritance clause would be immediately nullified. A chill ran down my spine. I wasn't dealing with a simple cheater but a methodical con artist. He had committed a felony, bigamy. He needed the wedding with me to legitimize his inheritance and deceive the shareholders and the family board. And I also understood why that file folder was in the suitcase. It wasn't an accident, it was a calculated trap. Isabel, that fragile adopted sister, wanted me to find it. What did she expect me to do? She wanted me to lose my mind, to be consumed by jealousy, to cancel the wedding at the last minute. If I canceled the wedding, Jack wouldn't fulfill the will's conditions and would lose his entire fortune. But at the same time, he would be free of me, and Isabel would remain by his side as his only legal wife. 2 birds with 1 stone. She intended to destroy both Jack and me. They underestimated me. They thought I would cry, scream, and confront him in despair, like when we argued over trivial things in our student days. But they didn't know that this ultimate betrayal wouldn't shatter me. It would make me terrifyingly cold. I got out of bed, very slowly, silently. I walked barefoot on the cold oak floor. When I reached the living room, the city lights were still shining, but to my eyes, they were just lifeless points of light. I picked up my phone. The screen lit up. 2 a.m. I called Mrs. Jenkins, the head of the event agency who had been working with me for 6 months. The phone rang twice before a sleepy voice answered. "Olivia, is something urgent?" I took a deep breath, trying to make my voice sound normal, even a little excited. "Mrs. Jenkins, sorry to call at this hour. I'm so nervous I can't sleep. An idea just came to me. I want to give Jack a huge surprise." "A surprise? At this hour?" "Mrs." Jenkins sounded more awake. "Tomorrow's wedding," I said, my voice filled with fake enthusiasm. "The whole program stays the same. Don't change a thing. But the commemorative video we were going to play at the beginning, I want to change it a little. I just finished another video that's much more emotional and meaningful. I'll send you the file right now. Please replace it and keep it an absolute secret from Jack, okay?" After hanging up, I sat in the darkness of the living room. This multi-million-dollar penthouse, which once symbolized Jack's success and our future, was now nothing more than a golden cage for me. How happy I had been when he proposed to me here, promising me a small home filled with the laughter of children. To think it was all just a meticulously calculated performance. Isabel wanted me to cancel the wedding, but I won't. I'm going to give her a gift that will make her believe she has won. I looked towards the vanity, where the dark blue velvet box with our wedding bands Saturday. A pair of diamond rings Jack had boasted were specially commissioned from a famous craftsman at Tiffany's, taking 6 months to complete. They symbolize our unique and unrepeatable love, he had said. What a sweet lie. I picked up the velvet box, feeling the coldness of the metal and gems in my palm. I opened my phone and accessed a luxury messenger app with scheduled delivery, recipient's address. I entered the address of the luxury apartment where Isabel lived. I had discovered the address when Jack accidentally dropped a condo fee receipt. When I asked, he dismissed it as a company apartment for discreetly hosting important partners. Another lie. Delivery time. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. The exact time a bride starts her makeup. I left the sender's note blank. Instead, I opened an anonymous messaging app and sent a message to Isabel's number. I had also quickly photographed that number from Jack's contacts, saved under adopted sister. The message was a single line. Let the one who deserves it most wear it. I wanted Isabel to receive these wedding bands. I wanted her to believe I had discovered everything and, shattered by grief, had decided to give up. I wanted her to believe I was admitting defeat and returning the symbol of our commitment. What would a woman think upon receiving her rival's wedding ring just before the decisive moment? She would think she had won. She would confidently put on her wedding dress, place that ring on her finger, and head to the ceremony to claim her man. And that was exactly what I wanted her to do. After all this, I returned to the bedroom. The night was long, but I couldn't afford to waste another second crying. I opened my laptop and connected the flash drive containing Jack's sins. Hundreds of wedding photos, the marriage certificate, the flight itineraries, even the twin pregnancy report. I didn't just copy them, I meticulously reorganized them into a presentation file. For the background music, I chose the same sweet melody Jack had selected to be played at the wedding. I started the video with photos from our 10 years of childhood friendship, pure memories, and then suddenly inserted the image of his marriage certificate with Isabel. Next, I interspersed their happy wedding photos with the ardent love messages he had sent me on the same dates. I worked like a machine, without emotion, without hesitation. Every time I inserted a photo of Isabel, my heart hardened a little more. And when I placed the ultrasound of the twins as the final image, I knew my surprise gift for Jack was complete. I uploaded the entire video file to a secure cloud server and sent the link to Mrs. Jenkins with a warning. Remember, Mrs. Jenkins, it's an absolute secret. It's my most sincere wish. Dawn was beginning to break. I had been up all night, but my mind was strangely clear. I wiped away all traces, put the sinful flash drive back exactly where I found it inside the folder, and hid it at the bottom of the suitcase as if no one had ever touched it. When the day became fully bright, I heard Jack stirring. I closed my eyes and pretended to be sound asleep. He got out of bed quietly, as if not to wake me. The small noises from the kitchen told me he was making breakfast. This man, while cruelly deceiving me, played his role as the exemplary fiancé perfectly. Shortly after, he entered the bedroom with a small tray and woke me up. "My future wife, it's time to get up and have breakfast. Today is your day. You need to eat well to be the most beautiful bride." I rubbed my eyes and managed the smile I had rehearsed all night. The smile of the happiest bride in the world. On the tray was a heart-shaped fried egg, my favorite, and freshly squeezed orange juice. "Thank you, my love," I said sweetly. Jack sat on the edge of the bed and watched me eat. In a tender voice he said, "Eat up. I've been so busy with business trips lately that I haven't been able to take good care of you. After the wedding, on our honeymoon, I'll make it all up to you." Make it up to me? The word coming from his mouth turned my stomach. Busy. Yes, busy getting married to another woman, taking wedding photos with his new wife, caring for his pregnant wife carrying twins. I felt nauseous, but I forced down that fake heart-shaped egg. I looked up at him, the man I had loved for 10 years, the same face, the same tender look. How can a person hide such a monstrous secret and remain so serene? He felt not the slightest remorse or guilt. "Honey," I said, trying to sound as normal as possible. "I'm a little nervous." "Nervous about what?" he chuckled, stroking my hair. "About not being the most beautiful bride. The wedding is so big. There are so many important guests. I'm afraid I'll mess up." Jack let out a confident laugh. "Don't be silly. You're my bride. Of course you'll be the most beautiful. I'll take care of everything. You just have to look beautiful and be happy." I leaned on his shoulder. The last lean. Happy. Since last night, that word had become the bitterest joke. I finished the entire breakfast filled with lies. I had to play my part perfectly until the very last second. I looked at the man before me, the one who was once my world, my refuge in life. Now he was a stranger, a brilliant actor in his own play. And I, from being the protagonist of a fairy tale, would now become the director of this play's finale. I ate every last bite and praised him for being so thoughtful, just as I had always done for the past 10 years, as if I still trusted him, as if I still loved him. But this was the last time. I don't know if he noticed the difference in my smile. Probably not. In his eyes there was only the image of the immense fortune awaiting him after this wedding. I stood up and stretched. "I'm going to take a shower. The makeup team will be here soon." "Sure, go ahead," he smiled. I went into the bathroom and locked the door. I turned the faucet on full blast. The rush of water drowned out the screams in my heart. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were puffy from lack of sleep, but my gaze was terrifyingly cold and determined. At 8 a.m., As scheduled, the doorbell rang. The makeup artist and hair team had arrived. Jack opened the door and welcomed them enthusiastically. I came out of the bathroom in a robe and smiled at everyone. "Olivia, you look beautiful," one of the assistants exclaimed. I smiled bitterly. I knew I had to get out of there immediately. I couldn't bear to sit for hours while others painted my face, faking joy in front of Jack. I couldn't be in the same space as him for another minute. I needed a safe place, a place where I could breathe and prepare for the final step. I turned to Jack and tried to speak in the coddling voice of a bride-to-be. "Jack, yes, honey?" He turned, still with his radiant smile. "I'm so nervous," I said, clutching the edge of my robe. "There are too many people here. I can't concentrate." "Do you think I could go get ready at the hotel?" Jack frowned slightly. "The hotel? Why? Aren't you more comfortable at home?" I shook my head. "I want to give you a surprise. I want to keep my bridal look a secret until the very end. I want you to be completely floored. I want you to be the most surprised when I walk into the ceremony." I emphasized the words surprised and floored. "I've booked a suite at the hotel next to the venue. The room is bigger, the lighting is better, the photos will turn out better than here. The dress has already been moved there. Don't you dare come. If you come, I'll be really mad." I saw a flicker of surprise in Jack's eyes, followed by evident relief. I could read his thoughts. He sighed in relief. He was probably also worried that Isabel might show up at the penthouse and cause a scene. For me to go to another location myself, a public place with more security, was exactly what he wanted. It would allow him to control the situation here more easily and prevent me from running into Isabel if she showed up. He didn't know he was releasing his prey from the cage himself. "All right, my love," he said with a big smile, coming over to hug me. "If that makes you happy, today everything will be as you wish, whatever you desire." He kissed my forehead. I fought not to tremble at that icy kiss. Then, "I'm leaving right now. You get ready here and go to the venue first," I said, quickly pulling away from his arms. I turned to the makeup team. "I'm so sorry for the trouble. Let's go to the hotel. My bag is in that room. I'd appreciate it if you could bring it along." I quickly changed into a simple dress and grabbed the purse I had prepared the night before. Inside was nothing but my phone, wallet, passport, and a small external hard drive with all the evidence. I walked out the door and smiled at Jack, waving goodbye. "See you at the ceremony, my love." "Yes, see you there. I love you," Jack replied, also waving back with a satisfied smile. The heavy metal elevator door slowly closed, hiding his fake smile and guilty eyes. As soon as the door shut, my smile also vanished. I went to the luxurious hotel suite, just a short walk from the ceremony venue. The room was spacious, and through its large windows, you could see the entire city. The makeup team quickly set up their equipment. The smell of professional cosmetics, the hum of the hairdryer. It should have filled me with the excitement of a bride, but in my heart, there was only a cold calm. As soon as I sat in the vanity chair, my main phone rang. It was Jack's mother, Mrs. Vanderbilt. "Mrs. Vanderbilt?" I kept my voice steady, trying to sound normal. "Olivia, where are you?" Mrs. Vanderbilt's voice sounded unusually urgent and desperate, a far cry from her usual composure. "I'm getting ready at the hotel." "Why, ma'am? Which room? Send me the address. I need to see you for a moment." "Come quickly," she said authoritatively, and hung up before I could reply. I frowned. This woman has started her act too. I texted her the room number and then turned to the makeup artist. "Excuse me, could you all take a coffee break for about 15 minutes? It seems my mother-in-law has something personal to discuss with me." Everyone nodded kindly. The room fell silent again. Less than 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Mrs. Vanderbilt entered. She wasn't wearing the luxurious outfit I had chosen for her, but an expensive silk robe. Her makeup was cursory, but her eyes held an undeniable anxiety. She closed the door, strode over, and gripped my hand tightly. Her hand was ice cold. "Olivia, my dear, I was so worried. I didn't sleep a wink all night. I have a bad feeling and came running to check on you." I looked at her. The woman I once respected, whom I considered my second mother, was putting on a magnificent performance. She knew everything about Isabel, about the twins, and yet she came here, held my hand, and spoke words of concern. Mrs. Vanderbilt pulled an old red silk jewelry box from her purse. She opened it, and inside was a sapphire bracelet, a priceless family heirloom. With trembling hands, she placed it on my wrist. The cold jewel touched my skin. "This is the family bracelet. It has been passed down for generations from your grandmother," Mrs. Vanderbilt said, her voice choked with emotion. "I've kept it for decades, waiting for this day to give it to my heir's wife. By wearing it, you officially become a Vanderbilt." I looked at the bracelet. It was beautiful, but it felt as heavy as handcuffs. I remained silent, waiting to see what she would say next. Mrs. Vanderbilt then grabbed both my hands and lowered her voice. Her tone was extremely serious and confidential. "Olivia, I know you're a smart girl. You and Jack have loved each other since you were children. Your affection is deep, but men are like that, especially before such an important day, with the pressure of work and complicated relationships getting tangled up." She paused, looked at me intently, and said word for word, "Whatever happens at the ceremony in a little while, whatever you hear from anyone, or if you see someone behaving inappropriately, you must trust Jack implicitly. Do you understand? Everything he does is for the good of this family." She squeezed my hand tightly. "I think it's a great blessing for the Vanderbilt family to have a daughter-in-law like you. Don't let any outsiders ruin our celebration." I understood. It wasn't advice, it was a warning, a preparation. She was afraid Isabel would cause a scene and had come to give me a tranquilizer in advance so that whatever I saw or heard right before the ceremony, I would endure it so her son could inherit his fortune. I slowly pulled my hand away from hers, lifted my head and smiled brightly, the smile of a devoted daughter-in-law. "I understand, Mrs. Vanderbilt. Don't worry, I won't disappoint you. Whatever happens, I will make sure today's celebration is perfect." Mrs. Vanderbilt sighed in relief, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "Good, good. I trust you." She stood up hastily and straightened her clothes. "Then, I'm going to get ready. You get your makeup done too, and don't be late." She left the room as quickly as she had arrived. As soon as the door closed, my smile vanished. I took off the sapphire bracelet and placed it on the table. I called the makeup team back in to begin their work. I closed my eyes and let them paint my face. I tried to empty my mind, the scent of perfumed powder, the soft brush of bristles on my skin. I was like a wooden doll, letting them manipulate me as they pleased. I learned much later that at the very moment Mrs. Vanderbilt was handing me that cold bracelet, not far away, in another luxury apartment, another play was reaching its climax. Exactly at 9 a.m., the doorbell of Isabel's apartment rang. She, who had spent the night awake, tense and anxious, rushed to open it. A courier handed her a dark blue velvet box, identical to the brand of wedding rings Jack had chosen. Inside, a diamond wedding band shone. Immediately after, Isabel received the anonymous message I had sent. "Let the one who deserves it most wear it." Isabel was stunned. She instantly believed I had discovered everything and, broken with grief, had decided to flee in shame. This gift was a surrender, the return of my symbol of commitment. Victory was within her grasp. The first thing Isabel did was call Jack. She wanted to confirm her victory, but at that moment, Jack was busy greeting honored guests in the lobby. He couldn't answer. The unanswered call was the surest confirmation for Isabel. The bride had fled, and Jack was in chaos. This was her chance. Isabel didn't waste a second. She immediately called the wedding planner, Mrs. Jenkins. Isabel's voice was full of panic and compassion. "Mrs. Jenkins, it's Isabel. Something terrible has happened. I think Olivia found out about me and Jack. She's run away. This wedding can't be canceled. All the guests are big shots, and it's tied to the grandfather's will. If Jack loses the inheritance, he'll kill me." Isabel sobbed into the phone, a perfect victim performance. And Mrs. Jenkins, whom I had meticulously instructed the night before, also played her part perfectly. She yelled into the phone, loud enough for Isabel to believe it completely. "Oh my God, really? What do we do?" "But all the guests have already arrived, Mrs. Jenkins. Isabel rushed. I'll be the substitute bride. I can't let Jack lose everything. I'm on my way now. I have a wedding dress, too. Please prepare for me. Help me save Jack just this once. Okay, Isabel, Mrs. Jenkins replied in an urgent voice. Come right now. I'll be waiting for you. The call ended, and Isabel breathed a sigh of relief. She had achieved her goal. Isabel opened her closet, and there hung a sumptuous wedding dress, a dress she had secretly made a long time ago. She had been waiting for this day. She put on the dress, applied heavy makeup, and finally placed the diamond ring I had sent her on her ring finger. Isabel looked at herself in the mirror with a victorious smile. She didn't know that dress, that ring, and that smile were all part of my plan. I opened my eyes. The makeup artist was finished. Olivia, you look absolutely breathtaking, an assistant whispered. I looked in the mirror, a perfectly made-up face, beautiful but cold, with no trace of emotion in my eyes. I wasn't wearing a wedding dress. I was still in the simple dress I had put on that morning. I stood up and looked at the clock. 10 a.m., the time the wedding hall started to receive guests. I knew because the phone in the hotel suite started to vibrate. It was Jack. The contact name, my love, flashed on the screen, a name I had saved 10 years ago. Now, seeing it only brought a bitter irony, I didn't answer. I let the phone vibrate. The ringing was urgent, desperate. The vibration on the glass table created a shrill noise. He kept calling. 4, 5 times. As I continued not to answer, the phone switched to text messages. Honey, where are you? Why aren't you answering? A lot of guests have arrived. I read the message but didn't reply. I could imagine his expression at this moment. Puzzled, anxious, maybe a little scared. Scared that his plan would fail. Another message came. Are you mad at me about something? Please answer. This is no time for jokes. Today is our big day. Our big day. I felt a pang of bitterness. I picked up the phone and typed. After 10 years of loving him, I knew him too well. He is an arrogant man. He needs the security of knowing everything is under control. I sent a message with the tone of a whimsical bride. I'm preparing the biggest surprise of your life. Don't look for me. I will appear when the time is right. It will be something you'll never forget. I pressed send. A few seconds later, the read receipt appeared. He read it instantly, and the reply came immediately. I could feel the relief in every word. What a surprise. You don't know how worried I was. I know you love me. Come soon. People are waiting. I love you. I love you. Those 2 words, even at this moment, he could type them so easily. He thought it was a silly tantrum, that I was still the foolish woman who followed him around. He didn't know that the surprise I was talking about would truly be a gift he would never forget in his entire life. I stared at the words, I love you, on the screen. It was the last time. I didn't reply. I calmly turned off the phone. Then I opened the SIM tray. The SIM card that had been with me for 10 years, containing countless text messages and call records between us. I snapped it in 2 with my fingers. I dropped the 2 broken pieces of the SIM into the glass of water on the table. They slowly sank to the bottom. All contact was officially severed. I was no longer Olivia, the fiancé of Jackson Vanderbilt III. I was Olivia, a free woman. I picked up a burner phone I had prepared. A completely new phone. A completely new SIM. In it were saved only the number of my best friend Chloe and the wedding planner, Mrs. Jenkins. It was 11 a.m. I wasn't in the wedding hall. I was sitting in a luxurious cafe on the top floor of the hotel, directly opposite the ceremony venue. From this corner, I could see the sumptuous lobby below, watching the guests file in, but I didn't need to see it with my own eyes. On the burner phone, I opened a secret live stream link. The screen lit up, and it was the camera angle held by my best friend Chloe. She was sitting in a corner near the sound equipment, just as we had planned. The wedding hall lobby was as splendid as I had designed it. My favorite imported cherry blossoms were woven into large clusters, covering the entire stage like a garden from a winter fairy tale. The light from the crystal chandeliers was dazzling, and there were 500 guests. I glanced at the screen. I recognized them. They were not our close friends. They were members of the Vanderbilt Group's board of directors, high-level business partners from all over, major shareholders who held the voting power to decide Jack's future. This wasn't a wedding, it was a demonstration of power, the heir's debut. Chloe's camera panned to the stage. Jackson Vanderbilt III stood there, impeccable in a custom-made luxury suit. A happy and self-assured smile graced his lips. But after 10 years by his side, I could read his nervousness in the way he constantly adjusted his tie. He kept looking towards the main entrance, where the bride was supposed to enter. And then he would look back at the front row. Mrs. Vanderbilt was sitting there. She wore an expensive dark red suit, but her face was tense, clutching her designer handbag. Mother and son were nervous, not because they were waiting for the bride, but because they were waiting for the moment the will would take effect. A famous MC walked onto the stage, his voice booming eloquently. We extend a warm welcome to all our distinguished guests and partners on this very special day for the groom, Jackson Vanderbilt III, and the bride, Olivia. Applause erupted. Chloe sent me a text. Jack just asked me where you were. I told him you were preparing a big surprise, and he smiled with satisfaction. I smirked. The MC continued. Our couple has walked a 10-year path of love, a story like a modern fairy tale. Now, before we welcome our beautiful bride, let's turn our attention to the giant LED screen behind me to enjoy a special video together, featuring the most memorable moments of their love journey. Chloe's camera zoomed in on Jack's face. He took a deep breath, straightened his chest, and adjusted his suit. He put on his most radiant smile, that smile that had once captivated me. Now he was preparing to receive the blessings and admiring glances of 500 people. He looked up at the 100 square meter LED screen behind him, waiting. All the lights in the hall went out, focusing on the screen. Sweet music began to play, the same song I had chosen. I picked up my cup and took a deep breath. I sent a message to Mrs. Jenkins. Begin, ma'am. I took a sip of my chamomile tea. The bitterness lingered on my tongue, but it strangely helped me stay calm. On my phone screen, Chloe's camera continued to stream clear images. The lights in the wedding hall dimmed. Sweet music began to play. Yes, the song I had chosen. The massive LED screen behind Jack lit up. The first image that appeared was a photo of us at age 7, 2 kids covered in dirt in front of our elementary school. Then our high school years in crisp uniforms, our naive college years, and the photo from our first long trip after graduation, 10 years of photos from our childhood. Through the screen, I saw Jack smile, a smile of satisfaction and pride. He was completely immersed in his perfect script. He thought this was the sweet surprise video I had prepared. I watched him glance sideways at the important shareholders sitting in the front row. They were nodding in approval. A beautiful fairy tale love story, a story too perfect to solidify his position as heir. Murmurs of admiration began below. What a rare love to see. Look, she's beautiful and kind-hearted. I smiled. The main course was just beginning. The music, heading towards its climax, suddenly stopped, and a hush fell over the venue. The screen went black for a second. There were sounds of unease from below. Jack's smile froze. He turned to look at the screen, and then towards the tech control room. His face began to twitch. He probably thought it was a simple technical glitch, and then the screen lit up again. It was no longer our commemorative photos. It was a wedding photo of Jack in a black suit, his arm around the waist of another woman in an immaculate white wedding dress. The background was a romantic Napa Valley forest. The entire hall fell silent, only to immediately erupt into a murmur of surprise. Who is that? Did they play the wrong video? That woman looks familiar. Chloe's camera focused on Jack's face. His smile had completely vanished. He stood there frozen, staring at the screen, his face pale. He unconsciously shook his head and took a step back. No, they didn't get it wrong, I whispered to myself. I saw Mrs. Vanderbilt in the front row. She leaned forward, her hands clutching the back of the chair in front of her. Her face had turned ashen. The video didn't stop. It continued. More wedding photos appeared. Jack and Isabel kissing passionately on a beach in Napa. Jack carrying Isabel in his arms as they ran through a meadow. Hundreds of photos of their happy moments, a happiness built on my deception. My God, isn't that Isabel, the Vanderbilt family's protégé? Someone's voice was loud enough for Chloe's camera to pick it up. Jack began to panic. He turned towards the tech room, raised his hand, and shouted, "Stop it! Turn it off now! Turn it off!" But his voice was drowned out by the music. A new song began to play, a mournful, sad melody, like a requiem for my 10-year love. Jack's shouts were in vain. Mrs. Jenkins followed my instructions. She had already tasked someone with locking the door to the sound and lighting control room. Even if Jack pounded on the door, no one could intervene. The massive LED screen continued its cruel work of revealing the truth. After the series of romantic wedding photos, the screen switched to a simple white background, and then a clear scan of the marriage certificate appeared. Groom, Jackson Vanderbilt III. Bride, Isabel Thorne. Registration date, 3 months ago. The red seal of the city clerk's office was like blood seared into the eyes of the 500 guests. If there were only murmurs before, now the hall plunged into true chaos. Oh my God, he really married that woman. I can't believe it. So, what is today's wedding? Bigamy. This madman has ignored the law and ignored us. I clearly saw on Chloe's camera how an elderly shareholder, whom I called Mr. Perez, slammed his fist on the table. A scandal. An unacceptable scandal. This is how the Vanderbilt family does business. Chloe's camera pointed at Jack. He was no longer shouting, he was trembling. He staggered backward, bumping into the white cherry blossom decorations behind him and the fragile petals scattered over his expensive suit. He looked at his mother, Mrs. Vanderbilt tried to stand, but her legs trembled and she collapsed back into her seat. Her face was completely drained of color. The video wasn't over yet. The next screen was the honeymoon itinerary for Japan. Round-trip business-class airline tickets in the names of Jackson Vanderbilt III and Isabel Thorne. The reservation receipt for a luxurious ryokan in Hakone, bullet train tickets. It was all proof of the business trip to Dubai he had lied to me about. I remembered those nights. I was at home alone, worrying about him in a foreign country, sending him messages to take care of himself. Meanwhile, he was soaking in an onsen with his new wife, admiring the cherry blossoms. A bitter taste rose in my throat. Yes, I whispered to myself, this was his hard work. This was his sacrifice for the job. I once admired him for it. I thought how lucky I was to have fallen for a capable, entrepreneurial man who was not afraid of hardship. It turns out I was just a fool who had fallen for a perfect fantasy of her own creation. Contempt grew stronger than pain. I despised him. I despised Mrs. Vanderbilt and even Isabel, but most of all, I despised myself for the last 10 years. The guests in expensive suits and the ladies in costly jewels no longer maintained their composure. They all stood up, and many cell phones were raised towards the stage, recording this entire shameful scene. They were shareholders and partners. They were not watching a simple love scandal. They were watching the downfall of an heir. They were seeing deception in business. If Jack could deceive his fiancé of 10 years, he could also deceive them. The most valuable thing in business, trust, had been shattered. The screen went black again. The murmur in the hall grew so loud it even drowned out the mournful background music. People thought the show was over, but no, I still had one last gift. After a few seconds of eerie silence, the screen lit up again. This time, it wasn't wedding photos or airline tickets. It was just a single white sheet of paper, an OB/GYN report from an international clinic, enlarged to its maximum size. Patient's name, Isabel Thorne. And the final sentence, which I had deliberately circled in bright red, ultrasound result, 12-week twin pregnancy, normal development. If the marriage certificate was a bomb, this twin report was a nuclear explosion. The 500 guests held their breath in unison, an absolute, heavy silence that could be felt even through the live stream screen. Twins. Not just one child, but twins. He had heirs with another woman even before holding the wedding with me. Through Chloe's camera, I saw Jack. He was no longer trembling. He was simply motionless, staring blankly at the words, twin pregnancy on the screen. There wasn't a drop of blood left in his face. Mrs. Vanderbilt seemed to have fainted. The people around her were trying to revive her. And then, according to the script, the music stopped completely. In that eerie silence, my clear, serene voice echoed through the hall's expensive speaker system. "Congratulations, Jack." The voice he had heard for 10 years was now as cold as a blade. "I hope," I paused, "you liked the gift." As soon as my voice finished, the giant LED screen went dark. Immediately, the hall descended into literal chaos. Shouts, insults, the sound of chairs overturning. People stood up. Cell phones were raised like mushrooms. They photographed Jack, the fainted Mrs. Vanderbilt, and the shareholders who were pounding the tables with faces red with anger. Chloe sent me a message. The letters were trembling. "Olivia, it's really over. This is a madhouse. Mrs. Vanderbilt has fainted. The shareholders are looking for their lawyers." I watched the scene. I felt no satisfaction, no victory, only an infinite emptiness. My 10 years of youth had been buried in a grand and perfect manner in front of 500 people. Suddenly, Chloe's camera shook violently. It quickly panned to the main entrance of the hall. Chloe screamed in a voice message, "Oh my God, Olivia! Isabel! Isabel has actually come, in a wedding dress." Just at that moment, amidst the chaos, with Jack standing on the stage like a broken statue and Mrs. Vanderbilt receiving first aid, the main door of the hall, where I should have entered, swung wide open. Isabel stood there under the arch of white cherry blossoms, stunning in an expensive, strapless wedding gown. Her hair was up, her makeup perfect, and on her ring finger shone the diamond ring I had sent her. She walked in like a queen ascending to her throne of glory. Through the live stream screen, I saw Isabel take a deep breath. She didn't see the chaos inside. She didn't see the stunned expressions of the guests. She only saw her man standing on the stage. She probably arrived just after the video ended. She heard the uproar and thought it was the noise caused by my fleeing as a bride, just as she had planned. She thought this was her moment, the moment to step in, save Jack from the scandal, and proudly claim her place. She received the ring. She got confirmation over the phone from Mrs. Jenkins. She was 100% sure that I was the loser. With the most radiant smile of a victor, Isabel began to walk down the white, petal-strewn aisle. The 500 pairs of eyes that had been stunned by the bigamy scandal now focused on her. Their gazes were not of admiration, but of curiosity, contempt, and pity. "My God," someone whispered. "Look at that woman. She's the pregnant one from the video. How dare she come here?" The murmurs resumed, louder than before. Isabel's smile began to freeze. She realized something was wrong. Why was everyone looking at her like that? Why was no one applauding? And why? Why was her man, Jack, looking at her with that expression? It was not a look of relief and salvation. It was a look of hatred. The look one gives to someone who has pushed them into the abyss, the look of a cornered beast. But Isabel had already walked more than halfway. She couldn't turn back. She tried to keep smiling, and though her voice trembled, she tried to speak loudly. "Honey, I've come. I'm here." She still thought I had fled, and that she was here to take my place. Jack stared at her, his legal wife, the mother of his twin children, and the woman who had brought him to ruin. Isabel continued to walk up to the stage, extending her hand towards Jack. Her voice was dramatic, like a scene from an opera. "Jack, don't be afraid. I'm here. I am your wife." As soon as she finished speaking, the entire hall seemed to explode. I was still sitting, motionless, in the top-floor cafe. The scene in the wedding hall, viewed through my phone screen, was the worst kind of tragedy. Isabel's words, "I am your wife," echoed sharply through the speakers. It was like a lit match thrown into a powder keg named Jack. I knew him as a man who, in 10 years, had never raised his voice at me. Now his face was contorted. The humiliation, the collapse of his inheritance plan, the shameful exposure in front of 500 people. It all condensed, and his legal wife, pregnant with his twins, Isabel, chose this moment to appear. As the final living proof, crushing any hope of denial, he looked at her not with the eyes of a husband, but with the eyes of an enemy. "Get out." Chloe's camera was too far for the sound to be clear, but I could read his lips. A single phrase spat through clenched teeth. Isabel was stunned. She had probably imagined a scene where Jack would run to hug her. And if I had been there, he would point at me and declare that she was his true love. She did not expect to receive that command. Jack, Isabel was bewildered, but she still tried to get closer. "I came to help you." Olivia ran away. I said, "Get out." This time, I could hear his shout. And the scene that followed was something that, in 10 years, I would have never dared to imagine. The sophisticated heir Jack, my tender man, raised his hand. Slap. The sound echoed clearly above the crowd's murmur. The slap was so hard that Isabel's head whipped to the side. She lost her balance. The diamond ring I had sent her flew from her hand and rolled across the stage, but Jack didn't stop. Rage had turned him into a beast. He shoved Isabel, the woman carrying his twins, hard. "You bitch. This is all your fault. You've ruined my life." Isabel was wearing high heels, and the stage, slippery with cherry blossom decorations, was 6 feet high. Jack's push was too strong. I watched as Isabel lost her balance, teetered, and took a wrong step. She went tumbling off the stage. Her body crashed directly into the speakers and sound equipment set up just below. There was a dull thud, immediately followed by screams from the front row guests. Everything seemed to stop for a second. Isabel lay motionless on the marble floor. Her immaculate wedding dress was now wrinkled and soiled. And from beneath the white dress, a dark red stain of blood began to spread. Slowly but surely. Blood. She's bleeding. Call an ambulance. She's pregnant. My God, it's murder. The hall literally exploded. Screams, people making phone calls, camera flashes firing non-stop. They were no longer wedding guests. They were witnesses to a tragedy. Chloe's camera pointed at Jack. He was frozen on the stage, staring at the pool of blood below, at his legal wife and his unborn twin children. There was no emotion on his face. Blank. I calmly turned off the live stream. The chaos of the hall, the screams, the image of the spreading pool of blood, all disappeared as my phone screen went dark. The space around me became strangely quiet. In the top-floor cafe, soft jazz music was still playing, and the wind caressed my hair. I sat for a while longer, looking at the street below. The cars were still moving in a hurry. This city doesn't stop for anyone's tragedy, and I had to get on with my life too. I called a waiter and paid for the cold tea. I picked up my small purse and headed for the elevator. No one recognized me. That this woman in a simple silk dress and sunglasses was the bride from the tragic wedding that had just occurred in the building next door. I got into a car I had pre-ordered. An inconspicuous luxury vehicle was waiting quietly at the back door of the hotel. I got in, and the car silently blended into the traffic. The driver took me to JFK International Airport. I had booked a plane ticket a week earlier using a passport and a bank account Jack didn't know about. Since I had checked in online, it only took a few minutes to get through security. I entered the business class lounge. Here, everything was calm. There were only whispers, the rustling of magazine pages, and the clinking of glasses. A world apart from the scene I had just witnessed, a cruel contrast between hell and a place of peace. I found a seat in a corner. My burner phone vibrated. It was a message from Chloe. "Olivia, did you leave?" An ambulance took Isabel. It looked serious. That bastard Jack just stood there like a statue and then suddenly took off running. He didn't even follow the ambulance. He left Mrs. Vanderbilt fainted. He just left like a madman in his car. "Be careful. I'm afraid he'll look for you." I read the message but felt not the slightest agitation. Look for me? For what? To blame me for what he had done? I took a deep breath. For 10 years, I had lived like a worker bee, tending to what I called a home. I turned down better promotion opportunities because Jack said he didn't want me to exhaust myself. I gave up my dream of studying abroad because Jack said he hated long-distance relationships. I sacrificed, I endured, I believed blindly. I thought childhood love was the most solid feeling. It turns out it was the most fragile because it was based on habit, not respect. The large screen in the lounge announced that boarding for the flight to Paris was imminent, the 12:30 p.m. flight. I stood up and pulled my suitcase. I didn't look back. I walked towards the gate, where a new life awaited me, 10 years of youth, 10 years of love and deception. I decided to leave it all in this city. I wasn't there to witness the subsequent scenes. I was in the sky, passing through the clouds to the other side of the world. Everything that happened at the penthouse was recounted to me later by Chloe. Chloe said that Jack drove like a madman. He left Isabel being rushed to the hospital, his mother fainted at the ceremony, the 500 guests, and the shameful chaos of his family. In his mind, there was only one thought: to find me. Perhaps he thought I would be at home crying, packing my bags, or waiting for him to come back to interrogate and scream at him. He still saw me as the weak fool from 10 years ago, who, with a little comfort, a small apology, everything would go back to normal. He rushed to the penthouse, threw the door open with his key, and froze. The house was completely empty. Not the emptiness of a new house where things have not yet been brought in, but the emptiness of a place completely stripped. The expensive Italian sofa was gone, the 100-inch curved TV was gone, the walnut dining table was gone, all the designer clothes in the walk-in closet were gone. The commemorative photos of us that hung in the hallway were gone. Even my pink toothbrush from the bathroom, the half-used toothpaste, the shower gel I used, everything was gone. In the spacious apartment, only the echo of his ragged breathing remained. Not a single trace of me was left, as if I had never existed there. Chloe said Jack couldn't believe his eyes. He ran from room to room, the living room, the bedroom, the study, all empty, with only his own furniture standing lonely. Much later, he found a small note stuck to the refrigerator. It was a receipt from a luxury moving and storage company. The date of service was 3 days earlier. It was then that he realized it wasn't a sudden burst of anger. It wasn't a rash decision after discovering the secret the night before. It was a plan, a meticulously prepared plan from a long time ago. He roared. Not a roar of anger, but a roar of fear. The man who had been sure he could control everything his entire life realized for the first time that he had been played since who knows when. He realized. Olivia knew. She had known for a long time. My silence of the last few days, my smile this morning, the heart-shaped breakfast, my wave goodbye at the elevator door, it was all part of the play. He thought he was the director, but it turns out he was just an actor in my play. According to Chloe, Jack lost his mind upon realizing the cold truth. He started to ransack the house. He hoped to find a letter, a note, any trace of me. He opened drawers, lifted the mattress, looked in every corner, but there was nothing. I had cleaned everything perfectly. I hired a professional cleaning service, and they scrubbed the apartment to the point that not even the familiar scent of my perfume remained, only the cold smell of cleaning products was left. He collapsed in the middle of the empty living room, screaming my name desperately, and then he saw it. On the glass table, where just hours before he had tenderly fed me my last breakfast, only one thing remained. It was a photo, not a lavish wedding photo or an extravagant travel picture. It was our first photo from 10 years ago, when we were 2 young students, 19 and 20, taken in a small town in Vermont. In the photo, I was smiling radiantly, squinting in the late afternoon sun, and he had his arm around my shoulder with a proud, innocent smile. That photo, which for me was the treasure and proof of our purest love, was now torn in two. It wasn't cut cleanly with scissors, but had ragged edges as if it had been ripped by hand with violence, as if the person who tore it had put all their strength into it. The half of the photo with my image was gone, and only the other half remained on the table. Only Jack, with his innocent smile, his arm wrapped around an empty space beside him. Chloe said Jack picked up that half of the photo with trembling hands. He stared at the empty space that he himself had torn apart. He didn't cry, he just laughed. A hoarse, crazed laugh that echoed through the empty apartment. He understood. I hadn't just left. I had completely erased him from my 10 years of life. I had broken the past. The half that belonged to me, I took with me, and the half that belonged to him, I returned. His lie, his emptiness, and a future where I was no longer present. Jack clenched the half of the photo so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Then he buried his face on the table, and his broad shoulders, which I once thought were my world, began to shake. While Jack was collapsing next to the torn photo, I was thousands of miles away on a multi-hour flight. I curled up under the thin business-class blanket, trying to sleep, but I couldn't. The image of Isabel falling, the pool of blood spreading on the marble floor haunted me. I felt no satisfaction, no victory. I only felt fear of Jack's madness and the cruelty of my own plan. Everything that happened after my departure was recounted to me by Chloe. After I settled in Paris, Chloe told me that Jack didn't stay collapsed in the empty apartment for long. While he was wallowing in his mad despair, he received two calls. Two calls that officially closed all the doors to his life. The first call was from the hospital. The voice of the ER nurse was cold. "Mr. Jackson Vanderbilt, are you the contact for the patient Isabel Thorne? The patient suffered severe trauma from a fall from a significant height. We did everything we could, but the fetuses were lost. Both twins have passed away. The patient is also in critical condition due to severe hemorrhage. Please come immediately to handle the paperwork." Chloe said Jack just listened. Only the hand holding the phone trembled. He said nothing and hung up. The twins, what he used to deceive me, what Isabel used to tie him down, were no longer. He had lost his own children because of his own brutal push. But the tragedy didn't stop there. Before he could process the news, the phone rang again. This time it was an unknown but formal number, from the law firm that managed his grandfather's will. The family's senior counsel, an older man I had met, informed him concisely and without a trace of emotion. "Mr. Vanderbilt, I am calling regarding this morning's events at the wedding ceremony. Based on what was witnessed by the entire board of directors and shareholders, you have gravely violated the clauses of the late chairman's will." Jack seemed to react then, saying in a hoarse, raspy voice, "What are you talking about?" The lawyer continued calmly. "The will stipulates that you must legally marry Miss Olivia before your 30th birthday. Today is your 30th birthday. However, it has been revealed that you have committed an act of legal bigamy with Miss Isabel Thorne. At the same time, you have caused a severe moral scandal that directly affects the honor and brand value of the group. According to the clauses," he continued, "the same ones that Miss Olivia's father advised on, we are forced to nullify your inheritance rights." "Nullify?" Jack shouted. "That's correct, Mr. Vanderbilt. As of this moment, all of your controlling shares in the group will be transferred to a charitable foundation, according to the late chairman's will. You are no longer the majority shareholder." "I'm sorry." The lawyer hung up. Jack slumped to the floor of the empty apartment. Everything he had fought for, acted for, and deceived me for over the last 10 years was for this day. He wanted to have it all: the family fortune, me as the perfect showcase wife, and his secret lover and illegitimate children. But in a single morning, in a matter of hours, he lost me, lost his twin children, and lost his entire fortune. He lost the past, lost the future, and even lost the present. He had nothing left, except the half of the torn photo he held in his hand. Paris welcomed me with a late afternoon and a cold drizzle. I dragged my suitcase through the old cobblestone streets, feeling small and lost. But strangely, I was not afraid. For the first time in 10 years, I was breathing my own air. I was free. In the following days, I learned the extent of Jack's madness. After realizing he had lost everything, Jack did not go to visit Isabel in the hospital, nor did he go to the group to manage the chaos. He ignored everything. In his mind, only one obsession remained. To find me, perhaps it was no longer love. It was the resentment of a loser. He could not accept that a woman he had always considered weak and dependent had dealt him such a fatal blow. He needed to find me to question me, to vent his anger, or perhaps to prove that he could still control me. He used the last contacts and power he had left before the news of his disinheritance spread. He called the head of airport security, friends at the airlines, asking them to check the passenger lists of all flights that left the city that day. He believed I couldn't have gone far. He thought I would be hiding in the countryside or in some tourist town, crying. And when the information came back, it drove him even madder. His people informed him in a bewildered voice, "Mr. Vanderbilt, it's strange. In the system records, there are over 10 plane tickets booked with Miss Olivia's passport. All departing today." Jack roared. 10? To where? One to Miami, another to Chicago, another to Aspen. There are also train tickets, one to Singapore, another to Bangkok, and even— Jack didn't need to hear more. He understood. I had laid too thick a fog. 10 plane tickets, 10 different destinations, paid for with 10 different virtual cards. He couldn't know which plane I had actually boarded. He couldn't know where in the world I was. I had used the very money he had given me to order the wedding dress, to book the wedding hall, to secure my escape route. Chloe said. Jack smashed his phone. He realized I hadn't just left. I had completely erased myself. I had planned all of this for a long time. He had been on a chessboard where I checkmated him from the first move. His pursuit had reached a dead end. He was helpless, and for an arrogant man like Jack, helplessness was the cruelest punishment. In Paris, I cut all old contacts. I switched to a new number. I only kept in touch with Chloe through a secure app. Early winter in Paris was truly cold. The cold seeped into my bones, but it cleared my mind. I hadn't come for a vacation. I had come to start over. I rented a small, old but cozy attic apartment on an ancient street in the Le Marais district, a place with cobblestone alleys and a bakery that smelled of fresh bread every morning. I left my entire past behind and began a new life. I didn't use luxury items, didn't go to extravagant places. I found a part-time job in a second-hand bookstore, and at night, I took on freelance translation projects. I lived slowly, like a nun, trying to wash away the dirty memories of the last 10 years. Life went on like this, until one day, a problem arose. The landlord, a shrewd-looking Frenchman, suddenly doubled my rent and threatened to evict me, claiming I had violated an unreasonable clause in a French rental contract I didn't fully understand. I tried to argue, but my limited legal vocabulary was no match for his cunning. I felt helpless. Once again, I was weak, an easy target to be bullied. Chloe advised me via message to find a lawyer. There are many lawyers who serve the expat community in Paris. Don't let them intimidate you. So, I found a small, modestly located law firm on a quiet street, specializing in helping the English-speaking community with civil issues. I walked in with a heart full of worry. The person who greeted me was not an experienced lawyer, but a young man who looked a few years older than me. He wore a simple white shirt and thin-rimmed glasses. His appearance was simple, but his gaze was very sharp. He looked at me and smiled gently. "Hello, I'm Marcus. Please sit. Tell me what's wrong." His voice was deep and warm, and his English was surprisingly perfect. I explained my problem and handed him the French contract. He read it very quickly, then looked up and met my eyes directly. "This man is scamming you, Olivia." "I know, but I don't know what to do," I said, bewildered. Marcus didn't say much. He picked up the phone and called my landlord directly. I couldn't understand everything he said in French, but I could hear the firmness, the decisiveness, and the clear citation of legal articles. His voice was not loud, but it was full of authority. The call lasted only 5 minutes. Marcus hung up, adjusted his glasses, and smiled at me. "It's settled. No one will bother you anymore. He says it was a misunderstanding." I was stunned. "In just 5 minutes. How much do I owe you?" Marcus shook his head. "It's nothing. We help each other out." But he looked at me, and his gaze grew warmer. "Next time, bring me anything before you sign it so you don't get taken advantage of like that again." He handed me his business card. I took the card. I felt a deep sense of gratitude. For the first time in a long time, I felt protected. Not the possessive, condescending protection of Jack, but a protection based on respect and professionalism. We became friends after that. Sometimes we would have coffee at the bookstore where I worked. We talked about books, about Paris, about dreams. He never asked about my past or wondered why I had fled here alone. He just listened. By his side, I felt my soul, which had been shattered, slowly begin to heal. 3 months passed. The winter in Paris was frigid, but thanks to work and warm coffees with Marcus, my heart gradually found peace. I got used to a new rhythm of life, to making all my own decisions. The past in New York felt distant and blurry, like a bad dream. I started to think that maybe I would never have to hear those voices again. One evening after getting off work, I arrived at my attic apartment and was about to prepare a simple dinner. The burner phone, the only one I used for communication, suddenly rang with an unknown number. It had a New York area code. My heart skipped a beat. Only Chloe knew this number. I hesitated but finally answered. "Hello." There was silence on the other end of the line for a few seconds. Only heavy, weary breathing could be heard. And then a voice came through. A voice I thought I would never forget, but now it sounded strange, aged and broken. "Olivia? Olivia, it's me, your mother." It was Mrs. Vanderbilt. I stood motionless. The phone in my hand felt cold. All the emotions inside me froze. "Olivia, don't hang up. I'm begging you. I know you hate me and Jack, but please, forgive me." She started to cry. Through the phone, I heard heartbroken, bitter sobs. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice from trembling. I was no longer the weak girl of the past. "What do you want, Mrs. Vanderbilt?" I had called her mom for 10 years, but now the word Mrs. Vanderbilt that left my mouth was light yet sharp as a knife. Mrs. Vanderbilt seemed to pause for a moment at that address. Then she broke down. Her crying grew louder. "Olivia, come back. Come back and save Jack. He's about to die." I frowned. What new trick was this? "I don't know what you're talking about. Since the day it all happened, Mrs. Vanderbilt sobbed. He lost everything. The shares, the company. He locked himself in his room. He doesn't eat, doesn't drink, only drinks alcohol. Olivia, he's destroying himself. The doctor says he has severe depression. And yesterday." She took a deep breath and continued between sobs. "Yesterday, they found him in the bathroom. He tried to do something drastic. They rushed him to the ER. The doctor says he has a severe stomach hemorrhage and acute pancreatitis. Olivia, he could die." I leaned against the cold wall in silence. I imagined the scene. The man who was once arrogant and self-assured, the center of every crowd, now lying in a hospital bed, breathing weakly. "Olivia, please," Mrs. Vanderbilt pleaded. "He's in a coma, but he won't stop saying your name. He keeps murmuring, 'Olivia, I'm sorry. The doctor says maybe only you can save him. He's lost the will to live. I'm begging you, Olivia, for the 10 years we spent together. Come see him one last time, even if it's just for him to see your face. If something happens to him, how will I live?" Her desperate plea echoed in my small room. The winter wind in Paris howled outside the window. 10 years of affection. How dare she mention those 10 years? I looked out the window. It was starting to snow. I felt no compassion. I felt no pity for him. He wasn't dying of love. He was dying because his ego, his everything, had been lost. I heard her continue to cry on the other end of the line. I said nothing. I silently raised my hand and pressed the end call button. Mrs. Vanderbilt's call, her cries and pleas, haunted me for days. I tried to push them out of my mind, telling myself it was no longer my business. I had hung up firmly, hoping it would be the last time I ever heard that voice. But I didn't know that my silence, my refusal, would push her to make an even more insane and twisted decision. It was much later, after I returned to the States, that Chloe told me the whole tragic story. My best friend Chloe did more than just comfort me from a distance. Silently, through contacts at the hospital, she monitored all of the Vanderbilt family's movements. She was afraid that in their state of madness, they would do something against me or use the press to slander me again, and what she discovered surpassed anyone's imagination. According to Chloe, after I hung up on her, Mrs. Vanderbilt fell into complete despair. Jack was still in a deep coma, and his condition was worsening due to his lack of will to live. Desperate, while flipping through old family albums, she got an idea. She remembered my hometown. She immediately drove hundreds of miles from New York to my small town in Ohio. She didn't go to apologize to my parents or to pay respects to my late father. She went to find a distant cousin on my mother's side, a girl also named Amy. I wasn't very close to this cousin. My maternal uncle's family was of humble means and lived very reservedly. But the most important thing was that this girl, Amy, resembled me by about 60–70%, especially the shape of her eyes. With makeup and under dim lighting, it was easy to mistake her for me. Mrs. Vanderbilt found my uncle's house, an old one-story house situated in a narrow alley. Although her appearance was gaunt from having lost everything in 3 months, she couldn't hide the air of someone who once lived in opulence. She placed a check on the old wooden table and got straight to the point. According to Chloe, the offer was $100,000. "Amy, you just have to pretend to be Olivia, go to the hospital, and say a few words of encouragement to Jack. I just need him to regain consciousness and the will to live. This $100,000 will be for you and your family." My uncle's family was very poor. My uncle and aunt had struggled their whole lives, and Amy, after finishing high school, had stayed home to help her parents. They had never seen so much money. $100,000 was a sum they could have never dreamed of having. They looked at each other, their eyes a mixture of fear and temptation. They had also heard rumors that I had betrayed Jack and fled on the wedding day. Perhaps they thought I was in the wrong, and that this was an opportunity to help them while also correcting my mistake. The girl, Amy, hesitated a bit. She was scared, but Mrs. Vanderbilt knelt and cried, "Please, I'm begging you, save my son. If he dies, I won't have the will to live either. You just have to say, 'Honey, be strong, I'm back.' Just that one sentence, you'll be saving a life." Finally, faced with the enormous sum of money and Mrs. Vanderbilt's desperate pleas, the girl Amy nodded. Mrs. Vanderbilt, overjoyed, immediately gave Amy a large sum of money to buy clothes. She took her to New York. They gave her a hairstyle and styling identical to mine. She even hired the same professional who did my makeup for my wedding to make Amy look as much like me as possible. When Chloe told me this, my skin crawled. That mother, for her own obsession, would stop at nothing. She didn't care if it was right or wrong, if it demeaned Amy's personality or insulted me. She just wanted her son to wake up. She turned my pain and betrayal into a play, hiring a stranger to be my double. That afternoon, Amy was taken to the hospital. She wore a beige knit dress, like the ones I used to wear, and in her trembling hands, she held a fruit basket. With a heart pounding with nervousness and fear, she entered the VIP room where Jack was in a coma. The room was filled with machines. I asked Chloe what that girl, Amy, must have felt at that moment. Chloe relayed what a nurse on duty, whom she had bribed, had told her. Amy was so scared there wasn't a drop of blood in her face. She was an innocent country girl and had never experienced such a scene. Amy cautiously entered the room. A strong smell of disinfectant mixed with a lingering scent of alcohol created a suffocating atmosphere. On the white bed, Jack was skeletal, his face ashen, his eyes closed. He was a far cry from the handsome, elegant man in the photos. Mrs. Vanderbilt, standing by the side, gave her a desperate signal as soon as Amy entered. Amy, trembling, stood by the bed and spoke. Her voice had a thick Midwestern accent, completely different from mine. "Jack, honey, it's Olivia." Her voice was hesitant and scared. But Jack, in his coma, had long been on the threshold of life and death. He only heard the call of the name Olivia. He slowly opened his eyes and looked at Amy with a blurry gaze, and suddenly a faint spark flickered in his eyes. Amy's resemblance to me, through the haze of high fever and sedatives, made her image truly transform into mine. He said in a hoarse voice, You really came back." He extended his thin arm, the IV tube tangled, and grabbed Amy's hand. His hand was burning hot. "I was wrong. Don't leave again." Mrs. Vanderbilt, seeing the scene, clasped her hands in joy and cried with relief. She rushed to seat Amy in a chair and gestured for her to keep talking. Keep talking," Amy, pressured by Mrs. Vanderbilt, stammered again. She was so scared she forgot all the lines Mrs. Vanderbilt had told her to say. She said instinctively, I won't leave. You have to get strong. You need to recover." It was that second sentence, that trembling, unfamiliar voice, that pulled Jack out of his confusion. The spark in his eyes died. He squinted and looked at Amy more closely. The blurriness disappeared, replaced by a terrifying clarity. He recognized the face that was struggling to smile. He realized they were not my eyes, not my smile. "Who are you?" His voice was weak but full of menace. Amy, scared, pulled her hand back. I'm Olivia. Honey, don't you recognize me?" "No!" Jack suddenly roared. It's unknown where he got the strength, but he sat up abruptly and ripped the IV needle from his hand. Blood spurted out, splattering on Amy's clothes. "You're not her. You're not Olivia." He waved his hand and swept the tray of medicine off the nightstand, the metal clattering as it hit the floor. "Get out! Get out of here!" He grabbed a vase from the table and threw it at Amy. Amy screamed and barely managed to dodge it. The vase shattered. Mrs. Vanderbilt ran to hold her son. "Jack, what are you doing? It's Olivia. She's back. You're deceiving me too." Jack turned to his mother, glaring at her with bloodshot eyes. "You all deceive me. Do you think I'm that stupid? Out! All of you, out of my sight!" He roared like a wounded beast, smashing everything within reach. The wound on his hand opened, and blood flowed freely. Nurses and doctors rushed in at the sound of the noise. It took 4 or 5 burly men to restrain him and administer a strong sedative. Amy fainted from fright and had to be carried out by the nurses. As soon as she woke up, she cried, saying she wanted to go back to her hometown immediately. She no longer wanted the $100,000. Mrs. Vanderbilt's double plan had not only failed spectacularly, but had nearly cost Jack his life from the agitation. My heart was frozen as I listened to Chloe's story. I felt no pity for Jack. I only saw that a human being consumed by lies is ultimately destroyed by that very same lie. The fact that I hung up on Mrs. Vanderbilt and the spectacular failure of the double plan seemed to push her into a dead end. She knew I was the only salvation and began a campaign of psychological terror against me. She knew I wouldn't answer her calls, so she stopped calling. She sent me voice messages through messaging apps with unknown numbers. At first, she cried, appealing to Jack's critical condition and our 10 years of affection. When I didn't respond, the messages turned to curses and insults. "You are a heartless, tearless witch. You are a viper. If Jack dies, it will be your fault. If you don't come back, you will regret it for the rest of your life. You will never live in peace." And what was more horrifying, she sent me photos. Photos of Jack in the intensive care unit, his face gaunt and pale, with tubes all over his body. Photos of the wounds he had inflicted on himself in his delirium. These photos didn't make me feel sorry. They disgusted me. She was using her own son's weak life as a weapon to trap and torment me. I started having trouble sleeping. I couldn't concentrate on translations at night. At the bookstore, the slightest sound of a message notification made me jump. I became nervous and exhausted. Marcus was not one to ask questions. He would just brew me a cup of hot tea when I looked tired or sit quietly with me. One night, when a horrifying photo message startled me, I couldn't take it anymore. I buried my face on the table and my shoulders began to shake. I told him the whole story. From the 10 years of friendship, the night before the wedding, the will, the twins, and the daily psychological terror, Marcus listened without a single word of judgment. He remained silent until I finished speaking and looked up with red eyes. He looked at me, his gaze firm yet warm. "Olivia, running is not the solution," Marcus said in a deep, clear voice. "Even if you're on the other side of the world, they are still controlling your emotions with guilt and fear. If you don't cut that thread yourself, they will never leave you in peace." "Cut the thread," I repeated in a hoarse voice. "What am I supposed to do? I don't want to go back." "Evasion only makes them think you still care, that it still affects you," Marcus nodded. "The more you remain silent, the bolder they will become. You have to confront them once. Say everything clearly and end it for good. Show them that you are not afraid, that you don't regret it, and that you no longer care." I hesitated. To go back there, to face that man, that mother who had loved me but had betrayed me so cruelly, I wasn't sure I had the courage. As if reading my thoughts, Marcus gently placed his hand on mine. His hand was warm. "You won't go alone." He looked at me and smiled. "I will go back to the States with you." I was stunned. "Marcus, but your work here. I can manage it remotely," he smiled. "Besides, I have some pending matters to resolve at the U.S. branch, and I can't let my girl face the storm alone. My girl. Those words suddenly warmed my heart that had grown cold as the Paris snow. He was right. I couldn't run forever. I had to go back. Not for Jack, not for Mrs. Vanderbilt, but for myself. I needed a clear closure so I could truly start a new life with this man. Okay, I nodded firmly. I'll go back. After a multi-hour flight, I returned to the city I thought I would never see again. 3 months is not a long time, but everything felt strange. Perhaps because my heart had changed. The air, unlike the biting cold of Paris, was still humid and stuffy. Marcus pulled my suitcase beside me. His calm, solid presence gave me great strength, making me feel like someone about to enter a battlefield. We went to the hotel to drop off our bags. I called Mrs. Vanderbilt with a completely new number. On the other end of the line, she answered instantly, as if she had been waiting for this call for the past 3 months. "Hello? Who is this?" "It's me, Olivia." My voice was serene. She gasped. Then she shouted with joy in a hoarse voice. "Olivia! You really came back. Where are you? Come to the hospital right now. Jack." "I'm not going to the hospital," I cut her off coldly. "I'm back to set things straight. You pick the place, just you and Jack. If I see a single other person, or a single reporter, I will leave immediately." She stammered, bewildered. My firmness seemed to surprise her. Okay. Then, come to the greenhouse on the outskirts. It's quiet there, and no one will bother us. I'll bring him there." She hung up hastily. The greenhouse on the outskirts. I knew that place, a luxurious high-tech agriculture project in which the Vanderbilt Group had invested a huge amount of money, a place to showcase their class. Marcus drove me there. The car stopped in front of the main entrance, and he didn't turn off the engine. "I'll wait in the car," Marcus looked at me. "But if anything happens, or if you don't send me a message in more than 5 minutes, I'm coming in." I nodded gratefully. It will only be a moment. I got out of the car and walked alone towards the enormous glass greenhouse that reflected the dazzling midsummer sunlight. The automatic doors opened, and a cold air filled with the smell of plant soil and trees blasted out, and I was stunned. In front of me was not an organic vegetable garden or a high-tech melon farm. In front of me was the lakeside dock from the summer camp in Vermont where they first fell in love. There were pine trees, the scent of fresh water, and even an old wooden canoe identical to the one in their memories. Hundreds of cherry trees were in full bloom. Their snow-white petals swayed delicately under professional LED lights. They had turned this greenhouse into an eternal spring. I stood in the middle of a white pebble path. Around me was a surreal beauty, a beauty forced by technology and money. A bitter laugh welled up in my heart. Cherry blossoms, my favorite flowers. The flowers that witnessed his declaration of love 10 years ago. Until the very end, he thought love could be staged with money. He thought that even if he had lost everything, just by recreating a romantic scene and showing off his wealth, he could move my heart. There were very quiet footsteps. From behind an elaborately shaped old cherry tree, Jack emerged. If Mrs. Vanderbilt hadn't told me beforehand, I wouldn't have recognized him. 3 months. In just 3 months, the man who was once arrogant and self-assured, always the center of every crowd, was now just a shadow. He was skeletal, with ashen skin, and wore a long beige coat that hung loosely on him. He seemed to be swimming in the clothes. His sunken eyes were bloodshot and unfocused. But as soon as he saw me, those eyes emitted a strange glow, longing, possessiveness, and a creepy joy. "Olivia," he said hoarsely, "you really came back. I knew you would come back." He staggered towards me, opening his arms as if to hug me. I unconsciously took a step back. His open arms froze in midair. His eyes were still fixed on me. A desperate hope. The look of a shipwreck survivor clinging to a rope sent a shiver down my spine. His gaunt, skeletal face, his disheveled hair. I could no longer recognize the man I had loved for 10 years. He was a stranger, a pitiful ruin of the past. "I'm glad you came back," he staggered, trying to take another step towards me. But I raised my hand and firmly stopped him. He couldn't get any closer. He stood in the middle of that artificial cherry blossom forest, and suddenly his legs gave out. He knelt. The most arrogant man I knew, the heir to a group, the man who had never bowed his head to anyone. Now he was kneeling on the cold white pebbles. Olivia, I was wrong. I was really wrong. He began to cry, a hoarse cry, as if his tear ducts had already dried up. The fact that you came back means you've forgiven me, right? You still love me, right? You can't just throw away our 10 years like that. I remained silent. I looked at him as if watching a strange play. I felt no pity, no satisfaction, only a terrifying emptiness in my heart. Seeing my lack of reaction, he became nervous. He crawled on his knees, trying to get closer to me. Olivia, are you angry with me? Is it because of Isabel? Are you angry about the twins? He looked at me, and in his bloodshot eyes shone a fanatical hope. But you don't have to worry. I've fixed everything. I've cleaned it all up. My body froze. Fixed? Yes. Yes. He nodded like a small child boasting of his achievements. I know you hate that woman. I gave her a lot of money, a huge amount of money. She will never appear before you again. She and her family have disappeared from this city. He looked at me, expecting my praise. I took a deep breath. The cold air of the greenhouse entered my lungs. And the children are gone too, he said quietly, as if talking about something trivial. She miscarried when she fell that day. They're all gone, Olivia. There's nothing standing between us anymore. He was talking about his legal wife and his own twin children. He used the word fixed as if he were getting rid of a broken object, of trash. He simply thought that if he washed his hands of it and all obstacles disappeared, I would willingly return. Look, he tried to force a crooked smile on his gaunt face. Everything I do is for you. I lost the shares. The group collapsed. It doesn't matter. I'll start over from scratch. I just need you. Olivia, come back to me. Let's start over in this cherry blossom garden. I promise you. I looked at him. An extreme disgust rose in my throat. It was much more terrible than the feeling when I discovered the betrayal. He was not human. He was a monster who only knew himself. I looked at him. My gaze must have been so cold that his smile died. I shook my head, and my voice was terrifyingly serene. Jack, you still don't understand. I don't understand, he said nervously. No, you don't get it, I interrupted. The fact that you are kneeling here and crying, and that you have created this cherry blossom garden, is not because you are repentant, it's because you are regretful. No, I'm repentant, he shouted hoarsely. You regret being found out, I said slowly, word for word. You don't regret betraying me. If I hadn't found the folder that night, if my plan had failed, right now you would be the chairman of the group, and I would be the chairman's wife, a puppet. And you would be happy with your little wife and your illegitimate children, wouldn't you? He was stunned. My words were like a blade that stabbed exactly into his heart. He couldn't deny it. I continued, my voice still calm. You got rid of Isabel not because you loved me, but because she was an obstacle, a proof of your failure. You thought I was the last property you had left, a lifeline you could cling to prove you hadn't lost everything, but I am not. No, it's not like that, he stammered, starting to panic. I turned around, not wanting to see that face for another second. I came here not to hear your apology. I came to tell you that everything is truly over. As I turned, Jack's desperation turned to madness. He jumped up. That gaunt body suddenly gained tremendous strength. He ran and grabbed my wrist with the force of a steel vise. No, you can't leave. You are mine. I won't let you go. I've lost everything. I can't lose you too. I tried to pull free, but it was useless. Madness had made him lose his reason. He dragged me towards him. Excuse me, a deep, calm voice suddenly echoed from the greenhouse door. Jack's hand paused. He turned sharply and looked at Marcus. Marcus was standing there, I don't know since when. He was still in his simple white shirt and suit pants. His elegant, serene appearance was like a completely different painting in this chaotic landscape. It contrasted sharply with Jack in his gaunt, shabby coat. "Who are you?" Jack roared. But in his voice, there was already a hint of bewilderment. Marcus didn't get angry. He walked closer, his gaze serene but full of authority. He pried Jack's fingers off my wrist one by one, gently but firmly. "I would ask you to let go of her hand." As soon as my hand was free, Marcus pulled me behind him, protecting me. He looked Jack straight in the eye. His voice was still polite. "Hello, I'm Marcus, Olivia's fiancé." Fiancé. Those two words were like the final hammer blow that shattered the last fanatical hope Jack had left. He looked at me and then at Marcus. He took a step back, then another. "Fiancé? It's impossible." He shook his head, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. He looked at me, and his gaze shifted from madness to extreme despair. He clutched his chest, and a violent coughing fit racked him. He coughed violently, as if he were choking, and his whole body bent forward, and then he vomited blood. A stream of dark red blood splattered onto the white cherry blossom petals falling at his feet. He collapsed, unconscious, his eyes wide open, fixed on me. The scene of Jack collapsing and vomiting blood unfolded before my eyes. A part of me, perhaps an instinct derived from 10 years of connection, wanted to run to him, but Marcus held me back. "Don't go," he said quietly. "Our work here is done." He was right. I was not a doctor, and I was no longer anything to him. Marcus took off his thin jacket and placed it over my shoulders, covering the tremor I was struggling to suppress. He took my hand, a steady hand. He led me out. We walked past Jack's crumpled body. We didn't look back. His faint groans echoed behind us, but they were drowned out by the greenhouse's auto-playing music. When we almost reached the entrance, a shadow lunged and blocked our path. It was Mrs. Vanderbilt. She was no longer crying or pleading like on the phone. Her face, which seemed to have aged 10 years in 3 months, was now contorted with rage. She had just witnessed her son's collapse. She stood and screamed in a shrill voice, "You are a devil! Are you satisfied? You have brought him to this state? If anything happens to him, you'll be happy. You are too cruel, Olivia." She raised her thin, wrinkled hand to slap me, but Marcus stopped her slap in midair. His hand gripped her wrist tightly. Marcus's voice was serene but cold as steel. "Ma'am, please compose yourself." She tried to pull free, but it was useless. She turned to me and cursed. "You even bring a man to humiliate him?" I pulled on Marcus's hand to let her go. I stepped forward and faced Mrs. Vanderbilt, the woman I once called Mom. "You say Jack is in this state because of me?" I asked. My voice was as cold as hers. "And if not you, then who?" She screamed. "You abandoned him and came back to torment him again." I looked her straight in the eye. Those eyes that once looked at me with love were now filled with hatred and stubbornness. "It is because of Jack himself," I said clearly. "And also because of you." "What are you saying?" She was stunned. "He was a traitor. And you," I lowered my voice, "you were his accomplice. You knew everything, that your son was committing bigamy, that he had a mistress and a child out of wedlock. But you still found me at the hotel, put the family bracelet on me, and forced me to trust him. Why did you do it?" I stepped closer. I lowered my voice even more. "Was it for our love? No. It was for the will. For the billions of dollars of inheritance. You were afraid I would cancel the wedding, and your son would lose everything." Mrs. Vanderbilt's face turned waxen pale. I had hit the nail on the head. "You defended the deception," I continued. "You used me as a tool for your son to seize the inheritance, and you even cruelly tried to find a double to replace me. A cheap theater. You never truly considered me a daughter. That Jack is in this state is his karma. And you, ma'am, seeing him like this today is the price you pay for your complicity and your greed." I had nothing more to say. I took Marcus's hand. "Let's go. Don't go. Don't go." We walked out, leaving behind her frantic screams, Jack's groans echoing in the cherry blossom garden, and a 10-year past filled with lies. When Marcus and I got in the car, I sent a single message to Chloe: "Call an ambulance to the greenhouse on the outskirts. Jackson Vanderbilt." The car drove away from there. Forever. Years later, Paris welcomed winter with a white, soft snow like silk. Marcus and I got married. We lead a quiet life, not as luxurious as in the past, but warm and fulfilling. I opened a small bookstore hidden in an old alley, specializing in American and French literature. Marcus continues to practice law. He is now an authoritative voice, protecting the American community living abroad. One Saturday night, it was snowing lightly. After closing the bookstore, Marcus and I went for a walk. We walked hand in hand. He stopped at a gourmet food shop to buy some spices his mother had asked for over the phone. I snuggled inside my beige coat and waited for him outside. Across the street was a small restaurant. The warmly lit sign read, "Classic American Diner, the taste of home." The smell of fresh coffee, sizzling bacon, and grilled onions crossed the cold street, pleasantly stimulating the senses. The restaurant was full of people, compatriots seeking the warmth of home and curious Western customers. I looked inside through the large, steamy window and froze. The man standing behind the kitchen counter was busy cutting meat quickly and evenly. He was much thinner, with gray in his hair and his back slightly stooped. He wore an apron and worked diligently, without a moment of distraction. There was no trace left of the arrogant air of the once brilliant successor. Just at that moment, as if by premonition, he looked up. Perhaps he felt someone was watching him for too long. Our eyes met through the steamy glass, through the passing cars, through almost a decade of hatred and pain. He stopped, the meat cleaver still in his hand. In his eyes, there was no longer madness, no possessiveness, no hatred, only weariness, resignation in accepting his fate, and a surprising serenity. Me too. My heart was like a calm lake. He no longer felt anger or disgust. He was just an old acquaintance found in a very distant place. Marcus came out of the shop, wrapped his arm around my shoulders, and handed me a bag of warm ginger candies. "Aren't you cold? Here, this will warm you up." I smiled and shook my head. I took his hand. I didn't look back at the diner. He had found a way to continue living. Me too. He would probably have to pay for all his mistakes for the rest of his life. The past, however painful, is in the end just the past. It was left to steam away in a bowl of a classic cheeseburger and fries across the street in a foreign country. Marcus and I continued to walk together towards the warm yellow light at the end of the street where our home awaited us. Dear listeners, money and vain vanity are truly a double-edged sword. When greed and deceit take control, wealth and luxury become unpredictable disasters. The law of karma spares no one. Only when a woman achieves financial independence and has the courage to leave the past behind can she truly take charge of her life. The greatest revenge is not to destroy the one who has harmed you, but to forgive. Not because they deserve it, but because our soul deserves peace. What do you think of this story? Please leave your comments. And to support the channel, please subscribe, turn on notifications, and share the video. Thank you very much, and see you in the next story.